called controversial. How can I convince you when you're eager to hear? You turn your heart away from me each time that I draw near. Your eyes reveal to me with my they glance away in fear. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show? My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something. We both took the same model, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. Well, it's just a show. How can I bring the name to share the state? Knowing that you're right, blinded by the light. He is the free American, Clay Douglas. Catch the Green American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Every time I think about the damage that's been done, the anger will inside me till I'm almost overcome. I want to tear the moon down, the sky from the sun. For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American. I'm your host. I'm Clay Douglas. My guest today is Mark Elsis. Mark has loveearth.net. A lot of different things on that side of interest. And I'm glad to have you, Mark. I don't have a particular agenda today. Well, maybe I do. I would like to talk about this whole anti-Semitic thing that is used. You know, I got attacked by the ADL and Southern Property Law when I started the militias in New Mexico. And before that, I didn't have any idea, any concept of the whole Jewish issue, like most Americans. They weren't black there, they weren't Chinese, they weren't Mexicans, so they just blended in, and I had no idea what was going on. This whole anti-Semitic thing. Why would I be anti-Semitic? Why would I be accused of being racist for starting the militias? And the more I researched it, the more I found the incredible control that the Jews who say they're Jews but are not, that were even referred to by a Jewish historian as so-called Jews. It's pretty incredible. And this next issue of the magazine, the May issue of the Free American, that I'm working on right now, I've got one story that talks about $26 billion that goes to Jewish charities. And I've got another article here that lists all of the Jews in the Obama administration and the banking administration, and the Jewish reporters for the LA Times bragged about the Jews controlling the whole entertainment industry, the media, They control Hollywood, they control ABC, NBC, CBS. That's a pretty incredible power for 2% of the population. I'd like to get your take on this. Because, I've told people for the years here, I don't care who your grandmother slept with. I don't care where you came from. I don't care where your family came from. I don't care what color you are. And the First Amendment of our Constitution kind of protects your right to worship as you please. So,
sure does.
Never been one to discriminate. If you want to bang your head against a Wailing wall, knock yourself out, I'll watch. Try not to giggle,
That's where every politician that's running for office has to go to make sure they are subservient to Israel. In my document, Holocaust Revisionism, I have a little section in there about how they control everything, and I point out what I'm about to say. I say, first of all, the largest bank in the United States, J.P. Morgan, is the head of that his name is Jamie Dimon. He's Jewish. Okay, you have the largest investment bank in the United States, Goldman Sachs. The head of that is Lloyd Blankfein. He's Jewish. You have the new chairperson of the Federal Reserve is Janet Yellen. She's Jewish. Oh, and by the way, the second in command for the Federal Reserve was just okayed by the Senate 2 days ago, and he's actually an Israeli. He has a dual citizen with Israel. So he's number 2 at the Fed now. Another, of course, Jew. The previous chairman. So you have the Federal Reserve, which oversees the money. Some people say it might be the most important job in the world. You have a woman, Janet Yellen, and she's Jewish. The one before her, the previous chairman, was Ben Bernanke. He was Jewish. The previous chairman before him was Alan Greenspan, and he was Jewish. And you go back, and Volcker, his mother was Jewish, so he is. And you go then to you can even go to the other people in the Fed. They're primarily Jewish, like deputy chairman and such. And then you go to our Treasury secretaries, which is for the United States, this is, and you have the person in charge now, head of our Treasury, is somebody named Jack Lew. He's Jewish. The previous Treasury Secretary was Timothy Geithner. He's Jewish. The Treasury Secretary before Geithner was Henry Paulson. He's Jewish. The person before Paulson was Robert Rubin. He's Jewish. So you have, and you also have the head of what is supposed to be the watchdog, the Security and Exchange Commission. They put a Jewish in charge of that to make it look good. And we have one right now, Lace Walter, Jewish, is head of the SEC. And before her was another Jewess named Mary Shapiro. So you have in our face, and yes, the last numbers I had that I saw, that they were 1.7% of the United States population, so just under 2%. And for the world population, they're roughly 0.2%. We're 99.8, and they're 0.2%. Yet you see that they are in charge of all finances, and even the oversight of the finances, and the largest bank and the largest investment bank, and so you would think that perhaps they would put other people in charge of these and sort of have more of a detachment to it, but they don't. They're now quite full of themselves, quite hubris, and they're right in front telling us who owns us. And you see this in many different ways. You see it in what's happening in the Ukraine right now. You have our Assistant Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland-Munn, who, by the way, is married to Robert Kagan, who is co-founder of something called the Project for a New American Century, which 1 year before 9/11 they put out a document that, quote unquote, they were looking for a new Pearl Harbor. And the Kagan family are long-time Jewish neocons that have been quite disruptive and warmongers. But you have Janet Yellen now. We've seen her on tape saying, in the last 10 years, we tried to overthrow Ukraine in 2004 with a colored revolution, is what it's called, and it didn't work. And in December, she went in front of, I think it was the National Press Club in Washington, with a big chevron sign next to her and said, we've put in $5 billion over the last 10 years trying to help bring democracy to Ukraine, which means on average they've been putting in $500 million a year through NGOs, through the National Endowment for Democracy, primarily, in a bunch of front groups to cause destabilization in a foreign country. And a foreign country that has very, very close ties to Russia, a former part of the USSR, a place back in 1932-33 where, when the Jews were in control of the Soviet Union, they systematically starved to death upwards of 10 million Ukrainians in what is known as the breadbasket for Soviet Union. So you have them once again, and Nuland was over there in December, and then she went over there again, and McCain was over there, and they're all causing, we're causing this problem in the Ukraine, and they didn't get it fast enough. Their coup d'état, by the way, democratically elected government, and yes, it had close ties to Russia, but what it was is that they turned down the EU's proposal because it was terrible. It was a Greek-like austerity proposal that was going to loot them with gas, through gas, and through our big agricultural companies were also in on this taking over of the Ukraine, because it like I said, it was the breadbasket for the former Soviet Union. There's a lot of grains and food and meat that comes out of there, and we want it. So it's not just the oil and the natural gas deals; it's also food. This didn't get fast enough. So I believe it was February 20th. Somebody hired snipers. And it very much looks like the people that were in charge of this coup d'etat, of course, hired snipers to shoot people on both sides. Now, this has been done before, and it did. It caused mass craziness, I guess could be the word, in the Ukraine, and soon the government fell. And from what I've found out, that the police weren't armed. It wasn't the police that were doing this, and it must have been the Russians. The Estonian foreign minister was talking to someone high up in the EU, and the phone call must have been tapped by the Russians because it was leaked. And the Estonian foreign minister was saying he was there, and he got the forensic pathologists were saying it's the same type of bullets that were killing both sides, and so the snipers are shooting, both sides. This comes down, and this came out, and then the Estonian foreign minister said, yes, this is true. This was me on this phone call, and you had another phone call that was also leaked out, most likely by the Russians, with Victoria Nuland talking to people in the EU, telling them, "F you, we have our Jewish man that we want in charge." So it's By the way, I stumbled upon something that was quite interesting, and I hadn't seen anybody else write about it, although I'm sure somebody has. But I thought about it right after the shootings came out, the snipering of both sides. Is that back in Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, another former part of the Soviet Union that became autonomous when they broke up, they had a colored revolution there, but then they invaded South Odessa, and the Soviets put this down very quickly. But the interesting day that it happened on August 8th, 2008. Okay, this was the first day of the Summer Olympics in Beijing, 8808, and so
it's working, Walter. Thank you.
I found it very interesting.
It's working, Walter.
I found this very interesting that they tried to have a coup d'état in the former Soviet Republic there, and piggyback it on top of the Olympic Games. And what happened with the snipers on February 20th? Well, the Sochi Olympics, Winter Olympics, were going on in Russia, so they did it again during an Olympic Games. They did a coup d'état, and so they're using the Olympic Games as a like a cover. This is most devious. It just goes along with who these people are and what they want and how they want to get it. And now you have a situation in the Ukraine where you have Crimea, which was the warm water port for the Russian Navy, which was extremely important, and they thought they would grab that. By the way, to back up, ever since the Soviet Union broke up in '91, we have signed different kinds of treaties like ABM, anti-ballistic missiles, and such, and said we wouldn't do this, that, and the other thing militarily to encroach on their former Warsaw Pact countries, and yet we've broken every one of them and have done this, and we are trying to encircle the Soviet Union, which is very hard because I think it has 11 or 12 time zones. But nonetheless, on the Western Front, we have, and we're saying, we're setting up ABMs in Poland and saying it's to defend against Iranian, nuclear weapons, which of course they don't have, and they don't have the ICBM capability to shoot them. That's what these ABMs are for. So it's preposterous on the face. But so everything that we've said to Russia, we've broken. And so anyway, they went in and Crimea is a peninsula on the southern part on the Black Sea, and it was like 95% Russian, and that's where they had this warm water port, which is extremely important to them, that led them out to the Mediterranean. And you had them breaking away right away and saying we want autonomy, and they had a vote there. They had a vote, and from all international people that oversaw this, it was a legitimate vote. 97% of the people voted they wanted to become autonomous and pretty much have ties with Russia. And it was, I believe, like an 83% turnout of the vote, and 97% of the people voted to break away from the Ukraine. So, and we, everything in our media, which are controlled by these same people, these Jewish influence, everything, every bit of the media is. I mean, it's completely, the whole matrix is owned by them. And so they have been saying exactly the opposite. Or I mean, it's 24/7 propaganda. It's sort of like when we were young, we thought of the Soviet Union this way. through their different news agencies, and now it's us. It's sort of like the tables have turned. Not that I'm saying that Putin is a good guy, but he seems to be quite more the statesman in this whole. And also, their Secretary of State, Lavrov, I think his name is. I've seen him on interviews. He's quite he seems very intelligent and down to earth, and quite a diplomatic person, as opposed to Kerry, who seems to be, doing the job for the warmongering Jewish influence in this country.
Now wait a minute, let me stop you right there. Why did Kerry suddenly the Jews, especially the ones in Israel, are attacking Kerry? Because I believe he pointed out a truth that Israel is apartheid, more apartheid than South Africa ever was. I mean, they do discriminate against the...
He had to backtrack off that very quickly.
Yeah, he did. And Kerry's Jewish too, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's one of the secretaries of state that found out he was Jewish very late in life, just like Madeleine Albright. So, yep, he's also Jewish. Everybody thinks he's an Irish Catholic, from Boston, and he's not. So this is kind of it's a diabolical. I look to make it a big geopolitical game. I believe we're being set up for World War III. This is what it very much looks like. It looks like what they did in World War II with Poland, and how they made Hitler invade Poland because of the Versailles Treaty after World War I broke Germany up into different pieces.
They certainly got Now I've said that Barack Obama is the perfect New World Order leader. I mean, he's black, he's white, he's Christian, he's Muslim, he's Jewish. His grandmother was Jewish, if that's who he is. I mean, we don't really know. But perfect foil. I mean, he's already got most Americans pissed off at him, so he's a perfect setup to become another Hitler. And with what he's doing in Iraq, in Libya, everywhere else, in Syria, he's setting Americans up to be the bad guy, isn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, they've tried to get Assad now. It's into its fourth year with Syria. A new, last August 21st, they supposedly crossed the red line. They accused Assad of chemical warfare on his own people, or the rebels, they're called, the Free Syrian Army, which is anything but Syrian. It's roughly 90% or so not Syrian. Mercenaries that we have hired, former what is known as Al-Qaeda, which is in and of itself a falsehood, but we've recruited mercenaries from all sorts of areas. And by the way, the former Blackstone X, or whatever their name is now, is Gray something. It's like Gray something they're called now. They keep changing their name. The Blackwater people. They seem to be over in the Ukraine, but you have Syria. By the way, the last August 21st, that chemical attack. MIT came out, and somebody else just came out 2 or 3 days ago and said it was a total impossibility for Assad's forces to do this. And right away, they're accusing him of now using other kinds of chemical, less lethal kinds of chemical. I see it in the British media and different mainstream medias. Right away, they're accusing him of doing a little bit less diabolical things because of this new study that just came out and said, and we were, Kerry swore on his Talmuds that, that Assad did this, and Barry was ready to go to war, and if it wasn't for the House of Commons over in England voting, they didn't pass the vote by 12 or 13 votes or something, and they didn't do enough, and we backed off because we didn't have anybody else going with us. So, now, what do you?
the bankers, and I put this in by the magazine. I think it was the last one of the last magazines that I did, where I referred to 9/11 as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning, and that's exactly what it was. Here you had a Jew that was leased basically a condemned development, the World Trade Center. They had engineers in there for 10 years, the Port Authority, which was Jewish controlled. The engineers went in and said, there's no way we can repair this, we can't build scaffolding that high. So the only thing we could do is bring it down. And so the Port Authority, the Jews in the Port Authority, leased it to Larry Silverstein 4 months before 9/11, and he insured it to the hilt, a couple of billion.
Oh yeah, he insured both of them. He tried to get double indemnity on it, on to make it 2 terrorist attacks. I believe he got just over $5 billion out of that. And I believe it was 8 weeks exactly before. I went to the oldest Catholic high school in the country, and it's down in the Bowery section of Manhattan. And I was on the track team. I used to run by there all the time when those buildings were being built. I watched them go up as a young man. And yeah, they were owned by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. It was a Rockefeller, pretty much kind of backed buildings. They were trying to make downtown bigger and better, and have this, the tallest building in the world again, blah blah blah. And it was leased out to Larry Silverstein, who, by the way, brags that he has Sunday evening calls with Bibi Netanyahu. So you see what kind of person this is. And it was just enough time to rig the buildings. 8 weeks. It just gives you enough time. And by the way, he supposedly had breakfast every morning, every business morning.
Top of the world.
Windows of the world.
Windows of the world, right.
Except that morning.
Right, and his daughter didn't show up either. She always had that.
Yep, exactly. Yep, and he supposedly had a dermatologist appointment, which I was actually thinking of doing a Freedom of Information Act to find out if that story is true. Nobody's ever followed up on that. And because he made a big thing of it, saying, oh, my wife made me go to it, and it wasn't me, I didn't want to do it, but she made me. Just right. Like he said in a PBS in late 2002, I think it was, about the Building 7, which nobody talks about, which the 47-story skyscraper that came down at 5:20 in the afternoon, and it wasn't hit by any airplane.
I was doing pretty well on May 20th when I put building number 7 on the cover, asked why did that fall, no plane hit it, and April, the story broke in the New York Times about George Bush allowing the NSA to tap everybody's phones. And on May 20th, evidently my phone was tapped. I called home and asked my son where he needed me to go next. Go down 24th Street to the wheel shop, turn left in McDowell, and it's right there. And 2 blocks before I got to McDowell, I got hit. I got rushed to the hospital, and they kept me drugged for 3 months for 3 broken ribs. And it wasn't the NSA didn't tap anybody's phones. It was 2 Israeli companies, Amdocs and Converse, that did all the phone tapping. Mm-hmm. Now, you also mentioned, let's not forget on 9/11, that the Pentagon was hit. It was hit one day after
Donald Rumsfeld came out and said $2.3 trillion is missing.
That's right,
and the controller was a rabbi.
Rabbi Dov Zakheim.
Yep.
who also, by the way, controlled a company, or
Yep.
started a company, that was in charge of putting these remote...
The remote control in the planes.
That's
Yep.
right. So these planes that flew in there, we know the Arabs couldn't have done it. And I said no Arabs in a cave in Afghanistan made the U.S. Air Force stand down.
That's for sure. That would be, see, that's where it becomes ludicrous. I wrote a major paper on that called Stand Down, and like 35 pages on it, and well documented, and that was the major thesis of it. How preposterous of a story can you guys concoct?
I said George Bush made me, as a conspiracy theorist, made me look sick.
Yeah, I mean, and here, I'm originally, like I just mentioned, I'm from New York City, born and raised, and I moved down like 3 years before to Sarasota, to a place called Siesta Key, and so I found it most interesting that my hometown is getting attacked when the President Bush that day, where was he? He was in Sarasota. And, everybody remembers that that video, which I put online, by the way, I made it known before YouTube. I grabbed that video off of a news site, a local newspaper here, Sarasota Herald, and they took it down, but I kept it up. And it was showing Andrew Card, his chief of staff, walking into the classroom when he's reading a pet goat story to the second graders in like pretty much the only black school in Sarasota to get his No Child Left Behind through. It's a photo op, so everybody in the world knows where he is. And Andrew Card goes up to him around 9:04, 9:05 and says, Mr. President, the second plane has hit buildings, we're under attack. Now, Michael Moore totally misrepresented this in his film. He said, and for like another 7 minutes or whatever it was, he sat down there and kept reading the story. Now, at first you would think, of course, you would get up right away, since, this is the first time really the United States has been attacked on its home territory since the War of 1812. I mean, you could say Pearl Harbor, but Pearl wasn't a state yet, but we're under attack, and the commander-in-chief doesn't get up. He'd rather keep on reading his story to second graders, so it makes it look preposterous. But let's back up a little on that.
Wait, one more thing that you need to add. Where the plane supposedly hit, and it wasn't a plane, it was a missile. The only thing it could have been was a cruise missile. It hit right where all of those accountants that Rumsfeld talked about were working.
Yeah, and it went through 3 rings of the Pentagon. So it was and you see the third ring. You see an 8-foot diameter hole in the third ring. I mean, these are reinforced concrete rings. It went through 3 of them. So, but to back up, when there's only one video of the first of Flight 11 hitting the tower, the North Tower, and that was taken by these French young men who were doing a documentary, and they were on Varick Street, and they had a fireman with them, a captain of the firemen, I believe, and and by the way, the Newland brothers, they were Jewish. So I find it very interesting that they were the only people that seemed to get a picture, or they were the only people that got video of Flight 11 going into the towers. How coincidental is that? Nonetheless, you had a fire captain, I believe, there, and he put out over his radio and that this was a clear and deliberate act. And so at 8:46, he put this out. Now, the Bush is just about arriving down here in Emory E. Booker School, and you have this going out, and we already had the World Trade Center getting hit earlier with the bomb in the basement, which was, by the way, an FBI hole they let happen, but let's not get into that. But what I'm saying is, you had there was a certain amount of high priority targets in the United States that anybody in intelligence or had any intelligence knew, and the World Trade Centers were very high on that list. So you have this all points bulletin going out that said it's a clear and deliberate act right away. You have a high-profile target being hit, and you have the president, everybody knowing where the president is going to be. And so, of course, you would have to take what is known as the precautionary principle and say, we're under attack. And at that moment, of course, scramble all the Air National Guard stations like Otis and Langley that were closest to New York and Washington, and have them throw their afterburners on and get there, within 7 minutes of each plane could have got there after takeoff within like 7.5 minutes with afterburners on. So they could have protected the day. But you don't have this happening. So you go back to Emory School, and you're telling me that our intelligence, and by the way, these F-15s and F-16s that we paid, unbelievable amounts of money for, the best planes, best fighters in the world, and blah blah blah. They go 2,000 miles an hour, 1,500 miles an hour with afterburners on. They never went, supersonic. Even it was like 23% of their top speed. They were cruising along at like 450 miles an hour or so. Anyway, so you have him. He should never have been allowed in M.E. Booker School. Yet he is. And you have him then a second plane hitting. So now we're under attack. Everybody, if we are under attack, which of course we were, you have to say, oh my God, the president is a target. And he has to be taken out of that school. Andrew Carr doesn't come walking up to him. The Secret Service grab his ass and take him out of there. He has no say in the matter. So it was a lot deeper than people first thought, that it was just Bush and idiots sitting there. And by the way, I also put up the motor car. They went up to Sarasota Reagan International Airport, where Air Force One was, and at about 9:59 or 10 o'clock in the morning, they took off. I got the video film of that also, and put that online. And it showed, the videographer showed Air Force One all the way out. He zoomed all the way out on it. It showed it from the motorcade coming in, and I spoke to two reporters there, and I asked them this question. I said, were there any other fighter jets or anything around? And they said no. So are you telling me, and we had MacDill Air Force Base about 45 or so miles north of Sarasota International Airport. And so, and you had, well over an hour of time to get as many protecting fighter jets and or whatever there. So his Air Force One could take off safely, and yet they didn't. So I pointed this out. I said, this is quite strange. But yet on the way home from Office Field later that evening, you had an F-15 or F-16 off its wing, and they made a big thing of it. So, every which way you look at 9/11, and, all you have to look at, when I tell people, was it an inside job? And it's all right, it's interesting. It was always okay to say, well, it wasn't always okay, but to say it was an inside job, like it was Bush or Cheney and Rumsfeld and Condoleezza Rice, but don't dare say it was a Jewish neocon job or an Israeli Jewish neocon job, because if you said that, then you were like ostracized, you were shunned, which is one of the sites that I put all of my work on, was called shunned.net, because my work was totally shunned. I wrote the timeline of the day, the stand down. I wrote 3 major papers and 2 minor papers in the first 2 years, and I was questioning who were these first 5 people arrested? Who were the first people arrested in connection with 9/11? It was the 5 dancing Israelis. So, who later went on Israeli television, 3 of them, and said we were there to document the event. So, it just goes on and on, Clayton.
Now, one of the other things I want to talk about here, this 6 million Jews. You've done the Holocaust revision,
right.
And I've got something up here that talks about the 6 million myth here. The first Holocaust. This is Don Hedesheimer's book, The First Holocaust. Jewish fundraising campaign with Holocaust claims during and after World War I. And I believe this 6 million dead or dying Jews dated back at least 4 decades prior to events in World War II, and betrays the notion that 6 million Jews perished in Europe between 1939 and 1945. And this was all, I believe, if I remember, that this was happening in the Ukraine too, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, that's number 10 on my my list of 50 sections in repudiating the Holocaust. And there are. It started even well before World War I with these stories. One person put together, I believe it was 236 references to 6 million Jews prior to the Nuremberg trial announcement. A lot of them were happening around World War I, but they couldn't get the story going enough. They didn't have enough, I guess, control of the matrix yet. And the matrix itself, meaning radio and motion pictures, they were just in their infancy. Well, radio, didn't really start until 1920 in the United States. So they didn't get enough of a foothold to get the story going through just their newspapers, and the motion pictures were very little then. So they needed more psychological ways to get this going. But yes, this is one of the myths, is that and this number is, they need this number. That's why they stick to this number. They needed 6 million to return and steal Palestine. It's in the Torah. So this is why you're not allowed to deviate from the 6 million number. People realize, well, what is it with the 6 million? Especially when the plaque at Auschwitz was changed in 91 from 4 million down to 1.5 million. So it only makes sense. You take the 2.5 million off the 6 and you get 3.5 million. That doesn't happen. It's just
now.
You have
this. What is the purpose of this? I want to make people understand this, because there's going to be something else we're going to talk about. $26 billion that has been going to Jewish charities. So they've been doing this for 100 years. They've been raising money. This is an insidious global propaganda campaign to brainwash non-Jews into a state of abject fear and paralysis, while we're ideologically, economically, and physically enslaved by the Jewish tribe. That's really what's happening, isn't it?
Sure is. I mean, this is we are enslaved, and we think we're free still, and we're actually we're like farm animals, and it doesn't matter if it's a capitalistic system or a communistic system. It's two sides of the same coin. They control both. So and they've learned to give us some freedom, because we actually are more productive slaves with some freedoms. But see how free you are. You just try to get a passport even now, and you see how difficult just obtaining a passport is with all the paperwork, and very few people in America even have a passport or go anywhere, because we can't anymore. I mean, they've been the amount of inequality, income disparity that has happened in the last 50 years has been squeezing. First, it was squeezing, the more poor people, and they said, oh, it's the welfare queens and the welfare mamas, and they always place blame elsewhere, where the real amount of welfare, of course, is the corporate welfare. It dwarfs what is given to people that are poor, and dwarfs 1,000-fold. There's no comparison, and yet they get a lot of people to place blame on the least fortunate among us. And I'm one that always said I believe 97% of men, if you give them an honorable job with a decent money and decent benefits, they're going to work. But in the last 50 years, we've seen this has fallen apart, and they've killed the middle class. First they killed the poor, then the middle class. Now they're killing the upper middle class. I mean, in the last 6 years since 2008, since the big downturn, only the top 5% of people are making out, and really only not the top 1%, and really only the top 1/10 of 1%, and really only the top 100th of 1% are making the vast amount. You got me right. The 100th of 1% are taking. When you see a graph, you see what they are taking. And we're talking about the richest of the rich of the rich. 12,000 families. They're taking it all, and everybody else. So the people, the people between like 90 and 95 percentile, they're just about breaking even, but they're comfortable still. But everybody below that is beginning to get hurt. Now, the people between 80 and 90 percentile, they're still, that's sort of the upper middle class. They're beginning to get hurt, but they're still getting by. It's the below. It's everybody up to 80% is getting decimated, and squeeze the life out of them. And you just have to take one barometer, which was the minimum wage, which, by the way, was just shot down in the Senate. A minimum wage to go up to $10 an hour, and that's minimum wage. Okay, in Australia, you have a minimum wage around $15, $16 an hour in Australia. So and ours is $7.25. Now, if you prorated the minimum wage from what it was in 1968, if you did an equal prorated, it should be almost $11 an hour right now, maybe just over, and it's $7.25. So they were going to raise it. They were trying to raise it to $10.10, which wasn't even equal to what it should be, at least $11, which try to get by on $11 an hour. You can't. And they're stealing all the pensions from the people. They've stolen the Social Security money. The Social Security isn't in trouble. The Social Security had a surplus of like $2.5 trillion that has been systematically been stolen and replaced with empty IOUs. And so to fight our wars all over the world and expansion in military and to give Israel money and to spy on us. And so, you mentioned about, the NSA and tapping the phones. To harken back, when I was doing my work on 9/11, because I came out with a major paper within 40 days. I published my first paper, questioning September 11th, with 200 questions, and a lot of them already answered. But they tapped my phone right away, and they made sure I knew about it. They tapped my phone, and every like 10 or 12 seconds it would go click, 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 click. And so I knew, they were trying to put fear into me, and that's not going to happen. And and I told other people, I said, I know technology. I said, if they don't have the technology right now, they will within a couple of years to collect everything on everyone. And people were saying, "Oh, Mark, come on." And I said, "No, you come on. They're very close to this technology to be able to scoop up every bit of phone and internet traffic in the world." And this is exactly what they've done. And so, and Snowden, there you go to Snowden, and he tried to, as we see now in hindsight, and where is he? Who gave him asylum? Russia. I mean, it's sort of like when we were kids. This is a total 180-degree flip. I mean, it's you
well,
would think.
let me stop you right there, because one of the things that I've tried to point out to people is that this whole Cold War is bullshit.
Yep.
The Cold War, that was contrived. It was a way for the Jews to sell weapons, atomic weapons. The Jews built the atomic power plants because they control the power. They sell it to you, and they could have built safe power plants, safe nuclear fusion plants.
Well, more safer with thorium, yes.
Thorium, yes, sir. I have a hard time remembering the thorium, but they could have built that. But you can't make bombs out of thorium plants. You can only make those with the spent fuel and the depleted uranium, which they are using to kill our own troops. It was Monsanto that gave us Agent Orange that they sprayed on the Vietnamese farmers,
Yep.
and to kill our own troops. If you survive,
I knew a boy that died from it when I was growing up. Yep. Yeah, it's just amazing how this is, by the way, who we are, huh? And you know, the people in Vietnam, there was a draft, so if you were called up, if you didn't go to Canada, you had to go, or if you didn't get a deferment, like Bush did, into National Guard, which he then left. But you know, it was, you had to go and fight a war, you know, half a world away, for what? For Jewish interests to make money, to bring back heroin, you know, to get some oil, to get shipping lanes, to scare the Russians, you know, scare the Chinese, you know, all these little. But yes, to use defoliant from DuPont, and now and Monsanto came up with these poisons of Agent Orange, the dioxide. It's one of the most deadly substances known to man. And so to spray it all over a country and have our boys, you know, come home and die from that, and then the depleted uranium, it's the same thing, and deny it forever. So here's brave young men that, you know, even though they were deluded or they were forced into it. See, now they're not forced into it. It's not a draft, but then they were. So I feel more sorry for them, because most of them were forced into it, and now now they're sort of forced into it because there's no jobs. But it's not a draft. But they do the same thing with depleted uranium, and they deny that it does anything. It's just like with Agent Orange. I mean, this is how we treat our veterans, and our veterans are offering themselves like $10,000 a year. They're killing themselves, and it's probably much higher than that. And so, what do they do? Why are they coming home and killing themselves to the tune of more than $10,000 a year? These ex-veterans.
They are more of my brothers that went to Vietnam. I didn't go. They tried to kill me before I got there. And but more of my brothers have killed themselves since they got back from Vietnam than were killed there.
Yep.
And another war with lies. And now let's talk about this whole. This is one of my other little pet peeves here, and that's the Jewish control. It was the Mossad that George Bush covered for, and I believe George Bush is Jewish too, because remember the 19, I believe it was 46, they put out a guide for Jewish soldiers and sailors, few that there were, and they talked about Colonel George Bush, who was under General Washington in the Revolutionary War.
Yes, I remember that. Yep. This is an interesting fact that it seems now when we start digging into our former presidents, how they seem to FDR has Jewish blood in him.
Lyndon Baines Johnson, who
Eisenhower, supposedly his father was Jewish. Johnson, most likely was a Marano, and the person he ran against, Barry Goldwater, also, his father was Jewish. You have Bush, and then baby Bush. You have now Barack Obama, who has Jewish blood in him. It's very interesting that this is a thread that is now, and like I mentioned before, you have John Kerry, who everybody thought was an Irish Catholic from Boston, and yet he's Jewish. And you had another Secretary of State, like I mentioned, Madeleine Albright, who didn't know she was Jewish till very late in life, like Kerry. What the hell's going on? I mean, it's like you begin to wonder. Are there more of these crypto Jews than we even know? Are there that are and they?
Well, let me give you an idea of one. Let me give you another little clue here. Let's see, Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
The royal family is Jewish.
Yep.
Descended from Jews.
And very few people know that. Matter of fact, the person who told me about that was John Kaminsky quite a few years ago. And I said, no way, John. And he goes, yeah. And I looked it up, and I investigated it, and sure enough, they started it a couple hundred years ago, if my memory is correct. And it's an extremist form of they formed an extremist form of Islam, and of course it's extremist because they were Jewish. So the way they infiltrate other religions it's unbelievable. I mean,
listen. Let me see if I can come up with one just off the top of my head. How about the Baptist Church? Oh, there. And folks, this is the way I put it on my website. This whole this is pretty incredible. Let's see, we got it's general consensus that we got a problem with our government, and one of the things that I hear, you brought this up earlier, at the back of this next May issue of the magazine, I've got 3 pages of Obama's Jewish czars. He's got more Jews working for him than Clinton did.
That's hard to do.
And these too big to fail bankers, they got a sweet racket backing both sides of every conflict. But when we try to investigate closer to try to isolate and solve the problem, due to a lifetime of lies and programming, we break down and begin fighting and arguing with each other. If we point out that the bankers are predominantly Jewish hit teams come after us, screaming anti-Semite, and their presses roll out tons of propaganda demonizing activists. The press and mainstream media, predominantly controlled by Jewish interests, apply the spin to the militia to make them the bad guys in the Steven Seagal movie. The Palestinians and Arabs are always terrorists, and the range of bad guys has been expanded to include veterans, preppers, and constitutionalists. Now,
yeah, it's
and let me point out this too. Talking about we talked about the Muslims. The Muslims are being controlled by the Jews, posing as Muslims into Saudi Arabia, for instance. And our first member...
you're right, because you wonder, this is for people that sort of don't really get what you just said.
Hold on just a second. Hold on.
The video will tell you. At Truth Radio, you can listen live or listen to a large selection of archived programs. TruthRadio.com. The truth is out there.
All right. Now, Go ahead now with
because
that.
of what they were doing in Syria. Well, what they were doing in Syria. So I just wanted to interject that, is that you see Saudi Arabia is sort of aligned with Israel and with us against Syria. And you're going, wait a second. I mean, it's sort of out in the open. How, what is it, it's like Saudi Arabia and Israel together? How is that happening? Well, that's how it's, that's how it's happening, because they took it over 200 years ago or whatever.
In this issue of the magazine, I also have a story, and I've got it up on my Facebook page, Free American 69. I've got a story about a common law jury in, I believe, Belgium, in Brussels, that has indicted the Catholic Church, the Pope, for child murders, child molestation, and they're talking about shutting the whole Catholic Church down, which the Catholic Church is pretty much run by the Jesuits. The Jesuits were started by the Jews, probably are Jews. The Rothschild Bank controls the Vatican banks, and
it has for almost 200 years.
Yes, and I've said that we forget that all religions were created by men just like us. Some loved us, tried to pass on their wisdom and conclusions to us through our errors with love. Others wanted to use the word for control, enslavement, and accumulation of riches through lies. When the brightest and best among us ran them from the temple, they were murdered, and the lies crafted to make their murderers into idols, calling them the chosen ones. Now ask yourself, why would we allow the murderers of Jesus to create a graven image, an idol of his defeated corpse hanging on a cross as the symbol of a new religion? So we're talking about this cult, these Satanists, these, and I don't even want to call them Luciferians, because I think that's, I think they've demonized, I think they've demonized Lucifer and tried to make him into the bad guy, and the real bad guy may be the Jewish God Yahweh that wanted to send them into the temple to kill everybody and smash the children's heads against the rocks. I mean, I don't believe that's the God. I don't believe the God of the Jews in the Old Testament is the God of Jesus in the New. So we may have been deceived for 2,000 years, 3,000 years, that these evil bastards have been doing this to us. And I pointed out that. Let's see, how did I put that? It's
that, by the way, they just blew up a boat over there, a flotilla boat, huh? And it was a black ops job. So they're trying to preemptively not have any more flotillas or anything. So now they're blowing the ships up before they can ever even have a bad press, like when they went on those Turkish ships and killed 11 in cold blood in the middle of the night in international waters, and even they killed a 19-year-old American citizen boy, and we never said diddly squat about it. Yeah, and you see another thing that just popped in my head was we had in an intelligence bill that was we were going to have some kind of transparency about who's being droned, but they got it taken out of the bill. Which I have said, I don't know on your show, but I said this year or next year, the first American citizen will be killed on American soil by a drone, and it will probably be the escaping murderer or rapist, and almost everybody will say, great. And that will open the door for people to be instead of having a due process where you get arrested, you stand trial, and maybe a trial of your peers, a jury of your peers. No, that's not going to happen. It's going to be your drones. And people, this is the funny thing about it, is people are willingly going along with all of this. I read another article about if 20 years ago somebody told you have to wear this thing, meaning it like a mobile phone. You have to wear this. You have to have this thing with you that tracks you all the time and radiates you. And you'll put all your information into it, which we can then take. You'll put in all your friends' information. It'll take all your GPS, everything. It'll know everything about you, and will track you everywhere, and cause radiation. People would say, "Are you out of your mind?" But now people, 20 years later, are all doing this willingly. So
it goes back even further than that. I said, and I want to point out this article will be I actually put the publisher's column for this month's issue, May issue. I said I've tried to point out those who are trying to enslave us and control us, but we must fight evil without becoming evil. As Willie Nelson, one of our great American heroes, said, "My heroes have always been cowboys. But I do not hate Indians. My brothers, our fathers, grandfathers, all veterans, fought the Germans, the Chinese, the Vietnamese, the Russians, the Iraqis, the Afghans, and the Jews. But we should recognize that we were all victims of our own criminal controllers, our own governments, and we should find a way to work together without hate or fear. The lines have been crossed too many times to point the finger of hate at each other." And
that's what they do the best, by the way. That's what I was saying before about the income disparity. Is that they get us to? It's an old tried and true tactic. It's divide and conquer.
Yes, sir.
They get us to fight ourselves. Now that if it's Democrat versus Republican, or if it's black versus white, or if it's rich versus poor, if it's straight versus gay, it doesn't matter.
Conservative versus liberal.
Yeah, yes, it's woman versus man. It's old versus young. They'll find a wedge and they'll drive it through it.
Well,
instead of looking, who the hell is controlling us?
That's right, and I pointed out who's controlling us, and you pointed out, and of course we're demonized, and they certainly came after me financially. I ought to be making a good living here writing. I've done it for years, but suddenly, oh, your name's Clay Douglas? We can't use you. And J.B. Campbell is on my show on a regular basis. He can't even get a job on an oil rig anymore.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of the people that have been on my show, like Edgar Steele, framed for murder. Roger Christie, put in a prison and kept in prison for years without a trial for marijuana. Now, that's one other thing I want to talk about today. Couple of more directions I want to go in. One, in my book Mystery Babylon, I document the fact that George Bush was covering for the Mossad. The Mossad handler, Michael Harari, bragged at a meeting about engineering 9/11. Michael Harari is now in charge of the Israeli Mossad. Michael Harari was Manuel Noriega's handler. George Bush, as CIA director, sent Colonel Edward P. Catolo down to Colombia to build radio towers that were used to guide in 100 plane loads of cocaine into Albrook Air Force Base, where they were then shipped up to a protected airport, and that airport was protected by somebody by the name of Bill Clinton. And the whole war on drugs that started with Reagan, back when I started head shops around Texas, back when I was the first distributor for High Times in the country, and my magazine was at the time Solomon's Herald, and it welcomed high times to the industry. And I tried to tell people then, hemp was our number one cash crop in the 30s, according to Popular Mechanics. $1 billion crop even back then, and they stole it from us. And now we've got our troops guarding the opium poppy fields because those nasty old Taliban that took over Afghanistan were destroying the opium poppy fields. So we had to bomb them out of existence, and now our troops are protecting the heroin that's being sent to Russia, to China, and to the United States. Our troops are protecting that. That's why they killed Pat Tillman.
That's right. Exactly.
Now, years ago, I got pretty disgusted reporting on all of this crap that we've just skimmed over and outlined on this show.
Yeah, you know, Pat Tillman, J.D. Campbell wrote a great article about Pat Tillman, which I remember I put out again last year. It's if anybody wants to read about what happened to Pat Tillman, it's a microcosm of everything that is wrong with this country. And it's just, you know, he was the poster boy for the war. He believed the lies. He's a former pro football player and became a special forces and went over there to serve his country, but he thought he was doing right and learned very quickly that what you were just saying, that it was not about finding Osama bin Laden and more about protecting the heroin. And we ended up. He was going to expose this, and so he's going to go from poster boy for the war to the worst enemy in the world, and so they had to kill him. Read JB's article on that. It's a really excellent one. It'll make your stomach turn. What happened to Pat Tillman, and then all the lies around that, and the friendly fire, and how many times they changed their stories on his death, his murder, I should say. And it's just, but yeah, you have Afghanistan, right? The big bad Taliban almost eradicated the heroin, the poppies, and we went in there, and within 2 years, you know, they're up supplying 80% or more of the world's heroin, and this is what's propping up Wall Street and a lot of the banks. HSBC last year was caught red-handed laundering tens of billions of dollars worth of drug money. And this happens all the time. And they get caught sometimes. And HSBC, nobody did the perp walk. Nobody got arrested. They got a $1.9 billion fine, and it's part of doing business, and thank you very much. And so I find it interesting, these same people that we're talking about, these Jewish financiers, are the ones that are running the international drug trade. And they have for forever. Ask about the opium wars. This was who was behind the opium wars in China when they owned and still own the British and sent their navy over there to enforce it. It's the same now. So they own the major distributions of drugs in this world, and they launder through their own banks.
That's
and
right.
Every now and then they get caught and get slapped on the wrist a little for a show. Nobody gets arrested.
No, but it makes it real easy.
Nobody.
It makes it real easy, and I discovered this a long time ago. They told me back in Dallas, well, if you worked for us, Clay, you wouldn't have any problems. I don't work for nobody. And so I did my time in prison because I wouldn't work for nobody. I wouldn't do what they wanted. I wouldn't be part of their organization. Whether you call it the mafia or whether you call it the cartels, it's all the same thing. It's the CIA, it's the Mossad. They control the drugs. They bring them in. So then they know who's buying them. You are identified as soon as you buy it. Somebody asked me one time, well, Clay, Isn't marijuana a gateway drug? Oh, absolutely. If you buy it from a drug dealer, if you got to buy it from a drug dealer, if you can't grow it in your backyard, yeah, it's damn right it's a gateway drug. Because they'll be love to sell you some of that CIA cocaine or that CIA heroin or that CIA methamphetamine.
Yep.
And
that's why if you turn on your TV, you get every other commercial is a drug commercial. And it's and these pharmaceutical companies are getting less and less being able to fight them in court if anything is bad about their drugs that they're pushing, which of course are. The whole allopathic medicine is set up to kill you.
One of my friends over in, I believe it's, where are you at there, Cyanide? Cyanide 77. He's just outside of Holland, I believe. He said marijuana is a gateway to cookies and soda.
I mean, it's... Yeah,
Holland. He's in Holland. He's in Holland, and it's legal there. It's legal there. You can smoke it there. Now, Colorado is probably the poster child for the whole freedom movement. Now, this is why they try to demonize us. He smokes marijuana. Clay supports legalization of marijuana. I support the legalization of all drugs. If you want to kill yourself with heroin, buy it from the drugstore. Buy it from the drugstore and go to your little bathroom there and kill yourself. I don't care. I would rather watch them haul your body out than put you in a work camp, a slave labor camp, to work for IBM for 25 cents an hour because of something you had in your pocket.
Yep. How dare they to be able to control your consciousness? Now, I mean, people, this is, I'm with you on this 100%. The war on drugs is evil in, like, every which way you look at it. It's just, how, especially marijuana. Marijuana now is I've been learning more and more about it, and the health benefits are unbelievable. I just saw this documentary, I don't know, a couple of months ago, and it was talking about all the cannabinoids in it, and this one doctor said that there was many studies, and I didn't know of any of them, but they said that even if you smoke marijuana, people that smoke marijuana even heavily have or just less lung cancer than people that don't smoke anything at all.
Wait a minute. Repeat that because you broke up a little bit. Skype kind of wavered. They didn't want that information getting out.
It was this doctor on the. He was talking about all the medical benefits of marijuana and the cannabinoids, and he was saying that even if you smoke marijuana, even people that smoke it regularly have less lung cancer than people who smoke anything at all. And I always thought, that smoke it, something's going to happen to your lungs because it can't be good. But I'm wrong. And
you are wrong. And I was kind of excited when they passed medical marijuana in Arizona, and I think it's a step in the right direction. But I am not in favor of medical marijuana because that's simply a tactic of the pharmaceutical companies and their drug dealers, the doctors. You can now, son, if you show up and let me examine you, I can write you a prescription for it. Why should I pay a doctor to give me permission to smoke something that God gave me? I probably won't do that. But it turns out, Mark, I couldn't get medical marijuana because I'm too healthy, and that's because I've been smoking it for 45 years.
Yeah, it's amazing amount of. I just saw a list. I believe it was 158 now medically known for different kinds of medical problems that it helps. And you know, it's just I looked over the list. This is only within the last few days, and it was like blown away. I knew like a couple of dozen, but it you know, we've been with this drug. This drug, I think it's been on the planet for like 33 million years. We have receptors on our body for this. You know, it's so we've been mixing with this drug for a long time. And once again, it goes back to, you know, we have laws for everything. Now, if I'm in my home and I want to smoke a joint, who is the government? What right do they have to tell me I can't do that? Really, where the hell are they coming from? How are they allowed to control my mind?
Well,
not only marijuana, whatever drug,
Rick,
you want to use. That's up to you. If you do something wrong on that drug, they have laws to get you for that. You know, but how dare they try to legislate and criminalize your consciousness?
I did about a year and a half in a Texas prison because I was threatened with 99 years. If you go to court for possession of marijuana, you can get 99 years in Texas. So I went and did time and met people that had been doing it in prison for 20 years for a joint in their pocket. And I wrote books. I wrote a book called the Solomon series, and it was about it was science fiction. I built it as science fiction. It was about the United States in the future when a man by the name of Solomon showed up, and they thought he was Jewish. The Jews thought he was the Messiah. The Christians thought he was the devil. The Christians thought he was the Antichrist. But he got marijuana and drugs, all victimless crimes, abolished in 46 states. 4 states kept the same laws and the same system, prison system they got today. So I really painted a picture showing you what a free society would be like, even with a controversial character. And it was, I'm planning on publishing it this year. I've carried it around for 45 years. I got it typed in, put it in the computer so I could edit it. A few little things. Again, I was writing science fiction, but I wrote it before computers, so my offices had IBM Selectrics in them rather than computers. So I'm editing that now, and it's a lot less like science fiction now that Colorado and Washington and Alaska and other states are starting to legalize. It will be when people realize how much money having hemp as a product could be, again. And if you go to my website and scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, you'll see a $10 bill that's got a hemp field on the back of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's Florida, where I live now. It's going to be on the ballot this November for medical marijuana. So it's in 20 states now. There's 2 that Colorado, like you mentioned, and Washington, that have it more legal, and the other 18 are for medical purposes only. But it's come out now that the vast majority of Americans want it legal, and even people are turning against, turning that all drugs should be legal. People are coming around to this, that throwing people in prison for drug use is, it's not good. Is what it comes down to. It's, and we know this. That's why I was saying this drug war is evil on every angle, because they know this. They know that 12 years ago when Portugal said we're going to try something new, we're going to decriminalize all drugs, and we went ballistic. We said, you can't do this, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. We tried to put all sorts of sanctions and kinds of stuff, backdoor pressure on them, and they said, no, we're going to do this. And what has happened? Their crime rate, their hard drug usage has gone down enormously.
Which country?
Portugal. And so they've made it a medical issue and not a criminal issue. And so we knew this. The people that really know what's going on understand that if you make drugs legal, the whole thing will be better. They always say, if you make them legal, more people will do it. That's not the case. Look at Portugal. And so it's and the demonization of marijuana itself, the 1937 Tax Act on marijuana, which more or less became the law against marijuana and hemp. And funny enough, the same year DuPont got plastic. So is this and hemp? I've read that you can make 50,000 different things with hemp.
That's right.
I mean, it's like the greatest product in the world. So, is this a conspiracy the lumber companies, the plastic, DuPonts of the world, the Georgia Pacifics of the world? Was that back in the 30s to make it illegal? For their own benefit? It certainly looks like that, because in 1942, when we were in World War II, the Defense Department put out little films called Hemp for Victory. They then asked the farmers of the United States, please grow hemp. It's not illegal anymore. Please grow it. And then after the war was over, it's illegal again. So,
and this, by the way, I've told people that every time a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers and ranchers first, because they don't want you feeding yourself. They go after the intelligentsia next. That's any of us that are smart enough to know what they're doing. And third, they go after the veterans and the law enforcement that are still loyal to the old regime. The whole thing with hemp was a war on the farmers. It was a rotational crop. You could pay your taxes with hemp last century. The Encyclopedia Britannica was printed on hemp paper for 100 years. How did Hearst get that castle on the coast of California? By working for the bankers. And what was Rockefeller's statement? Oh yeah, competition is a sin. Henry Ford built a car out of hemp. You could hit it with a sledgehammer, it'd bounce off. The body shops, the automobile companies wouldn't have made the money that they had, and it would run on hemp oil, and it would run on alcohol. The Model A's and the Model T's.
And that's right. It was Henry Ford, huh?
That's right.
Who did that.
Henry Ford also tried to tell people about the protocols of the Elders of Zion, and he put a copy of them in every Ford that he sold. And today they've controlled that with the foundations. Now, somebody just sent me, and I just laid it in this May issue of the magazine. Somebody else that's been on my show before, that's in exile in Europe, Rick Simpson. My name is Rick Simpson. I have been providing people with hemp oil medicines at no cost for almost 3 years. The results have been nothing short of amazing. Through man's history, hemp has always been known as the most medicinal plant in the world. Even with this knowledge, hemp has always been used as a political and religious football. I want this knowledge out there for everyone to learn. Watch the documentary Run from the Cure to understand more about using cannabis as a cure for cancer and other medical problems. The whole cancer industry, the research into cancer is a multi-billion-dollar business, and you don't need it. They never seem to find a cure. I've been smoking the cure. I don't have cancer. I still got my appendix. I still got my tonsils. I don't get sick. I don't take vaccines. And, you know, actually that's from 45 years of use, because I'm in Texas now and I don't smoke it. So,
you know, it's the allopathic medicine, how it came about 100 and so years ago, how they got it away from the more natural type of the medicine it was a much more naturopathic type of medicine that we had, and they saw, this is around the same time the Jewish influence came about, and more heavy-handed, like the Federal Reserve in 1913, and so on, and their control of motion pictures and then radio and then television. But they within 25-30 years they changed it over to allopathic. The Rockefellers and others, and now you have this Obamacare, and we're forced into this allopathic system. We don't have a choice. They don't have more natural, holistic approaches, and this is being foisted upon us as you have to have this. It's mandatory, or else you get taxed in the back end by the IRS, which, by the way, is a better deal to do that, because allopathic medicine is killing about 1 million people in the United States every year. And there's different people that have come up with this, including Gary Knoll and others that have come up with major studies showing that 800,000 to 1 million people are being killed by allopathic medicine. Even their own documents show that 89% of the time, what they're giving you is wrong. That's, I guess, why they call it their practicing medicine. So they're still, it's still sort of like they're bloodletting you. And the cancer industry, well, yeah, the cancer industry is like the poster boy for allopathic bad medicine. They instead of bringing people to a better diet and better lifestyle and exercise and better sleep and good thoughts and yes, marijuana and hemp oil, like you were talked about. I've heard nothing but unbelievable stories about hemp oil and what it does, especially with skin cancers. And so, why is it a Schedule I drug in the United States?
Because I can tell you that's real easy. Because if you're healthy, the doctors don't make any money off of you.
Exactly. Yep. Yes. It's sad but true. Everything is turned on its head in this country to keep you fat, stupid, and sick. And it's really, from the fluoride they put in our water, they're putting a toxic chemical in our water system. We have more people fluoridated, under fluoridation in the United States than the whole world has. So why is that? Why are they putting fluoride in our water system? I mean, when they know, there's studies that came out and said it decreases the average IQ by 7 points for the average person in their lifetime. And it doesn't do anything to help your teeth. It doesn't work internally. It works topically. This has been known for like 12 years now. So this whole fluoride thing is an amazing thing that only the United States really. It has like 75% of the places in the United States are under fluoridation, and this is to keep us, and it's not only to keep us stupid and apathetic, but to get us sick with cancers and brittle bones, and to make your pineal gland really calcified. So
all right, now let me stop you here. If all of this is true, and it's all true, folks. I mean, I've been researching this for well over 50 years, and well, almost 50 years. Don't want to age myself too much.
I was just about to say.
And I've been smoking pot since I was 21, so I can tell you there ain't no negative effects on it. But what can we? If all of this is true, the banks, the pharmaceutical companies, everything. What is our answer? These people are the doctors. The doctors are driving around in Cadillacs. You know, they don't want to change anything. They want to keep this. They've been educated by this public school system that we got, and that's a scam too. You can get. I'm working on my master's degree right now at Timothy Bible College, political science and divinity, and. If for somebody to get the education that I have, to get the degrees that I have, by going to a Harvard or someplace like that, they are ripping you off. Well, we'll loan you the money, then you can work for us and pay us back and pay the banks back and pay the bank. We'll loan you the money. It ain't real money. It's all. So how do we deal with this? The answer I came up with, I asked myself, now how did we make it 100 years ago? How did we make it 200 years ago? How did we make it 1,000 years ago? Richard Kelly Hoskins said the foundation of every civilization is the self-sufficient family farm. This country was settled by pilgrims, by immigrants, by people crossing this country in wagon trains, setting up homesteads, raising their own cattle, raising their own chickens, raising their own goats, raising their horses, setting up ranches just like Bundy's did 100 years ago. They built windmills to pump the water. They put batteries on the windmills and kept them charged. Why can't we do that now? And this is what I proposed when I had 5 acres out in New Mexico. I figured if I could put some low-cost structures, teepees come to mind because they're only about $5,000 for a teepee that's big enough to live in, and Indians lived in them for years. Why not set up these little villages? I call them Liberty Villages. Grow your own food and generate your own electricity. Instead of paying the power company, paying the Chinese to put in a solar field over here, set up all these solar collectors to collect this energy from the sun, pipe it over to the power companies, sell it to the power companies, so the power companies can turn around and sell it back to you. That doesn't make sense either. Then you are just working to pay your electric bill. I got mine here right now. $78.36 for a plug out there. If what I've told people, my Liberty Village concept, it could be on 5 acres, it could be a farm with teepees on it, or it could be your neighborhood, and you've got all these houses built on this square block, one block, which is probably about 5 acres, isn't it? One square block in the city. If you went around to every one of your neighbors and said, hey, let's get out of the city. Let's put solar on our roof, sell the excess power back to the power company. Let's put this solar generator over here. Oh, yeah, let's put this windmill up here. let's grow food instead of grass in the backyard. Why don't we all do that? We would have a self-sufficient family cooperative farm in every block across America.
Well, that's, I think this is where it will be going. And it seems like it's beginning to start what you just laid out, that people are beginning to realize that we have to get back to the land. Now we have solar power that is it's coming down in price dramatically over the last couple of decades, even the last 5 years. And I read up on this a lot, renewable energies. So between solar and wind, you can get your energy, and with organic farming, to get away from the pesticides and the GMOs, you get your own food, and there's this new kind of farming called no-till farming, which seems to be unbelievable. I saw this documentary about it a couple of months ago, and it had a lot of religious overtones, but nonetheless, what this man was doing was brilliant. And I've seen something else about it just recently also, and it seems to work very well, and it's an organic way to do it. And so, and for small groups of people to get together to grow food from the land, to raise chickens and what have you, and to grow a wide diversity of crops organically, and to live more harmonious with Mother Earth, with our planet, with our surroundings. And it's just a altogether a better, easier way of life, and to sort of decouple yourself from the corporate monolith that is taking control. And really, this is where it has to go, because the violent, to try to have a revolution violently, they're almost provoking it. They want this. And it's not like when our country was founded, when I had a rifle and you had a rifle, and I had an equal chance to kill you. That's not the case anymore. They have all the firepower. So even though there's a lot more of us than them, a lot more, I don't believe violence is the right way to go. I think one of the major things that we have left, the power that we do have left, is where our money and where we spend it, even though it's becoming less and less that we have. So, spend it with people that are like more mom and pop shops, and people that that you can look the owner in the eye, and so. But to get back what you're saying, you're correct in that to live a more sustainable life and a more harmonious life with the planet, and to grow your own food, and to have get your own water from your well, and have your own energy through the sun or the wind, or even a small water stream energy, water turbine, whatever way that you can generate it. This, I believe, more and more people are turning to this, because they're seeing that the corporate way of life is not rewarding. It's not. We've been led to believe that, it's so great, but it's not. And we're led to believe this through the
television,
yes.
programming. They don't call it programming for nothing, Mark.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's that we're being programmed to believe this. Exactly. And TV, that tube, that stupid idiot box, that which I rarely watch, but when I do, it's interesting. I flip through the channels, and I can't believe the amount of unbelievable garbage that's on. I mean, it's not even, I don't know who, I mean, it's like the Jerry Springer of the world stuff. You know, it's degraded. I can't even get the word out. It's just gone down and down and down. It's like the whole dumbing down of our culture, and you see this through that idiot box, which, you know, all these reality shows and this and that and all of this culture, this, you know, oh my God, you know, oh, what is she wearing, or what did he do, or all of this like trivial nonsense that they fill people's days up with. It's a very sad, you know, it's a very sad and way to live one's life, and we're at a crossroads. I mean, we're in really bad shape as a country, as an earth. We're at the make or break point, I believe, and so you know, I think a lot of people, out of almost desperation, are turning back to what you said, like this Liberty Village type of, more almost a cooperative, communal type of not living together, but making the earth work for you together.
Cooperative. Yeah. And by the way, there is I recommend that you go check out Oklahoma Food Co-op. And what they've done, they're putting together the farmers that are still in business. They're putting together them with the people in the city, so you can, once a week, you can go to the courthouse and pick up your vegetables, pick up your food, pick up your organic grown food. They don't allow GMO foods.
Oh yeah, this is happening. That there's a lot of these type of organic farmers that are they're selling their shares to people in their neighborhoods. They're cutting out the middleman.
That's right. That's exactly what I have tried to do with the Free American. Now, I sold 10,000.
This is growing, this movement. I just saw another documentary about it within the last month. It was excellent, and I've known about this. And they're a lot of these farms, and most of them are now organic, that they have shareholders of people around the neighborhood that are buying shares in the food before it's even planted. And each week they get a delivery, or else they go down to, like you said, to like a farmer's market to pick up their allotment of all the different foods. And you know, you eat not only locally, but you eat seasonally.
Now, something else that's happening here that will be in the issue of the Free American. This is pretty incredible. Bright Farms, look it up, brightfarms.com. They are making, in 6 states now, they have signed contracts with the supermarket chains to build greenhouses on top of the supermarkets.
Ah, brilliant.
And well, in several instances, they have built one big greenhouse, and they are growing the supermarket's food, the chain's food, in those greenhouses. So when you go to the supermarket to buy your tomatoes or your lettuce, it's probably picked that day and sent to you. You're getting your food fresh, no pesticides, no GMOs. You're getting
transportation costs.
No transportation costs. Exactly. No transportation costs. Like, no gasoline.
Like one of these documentaries that I watched, he said that, you know, when an apple falls off a tree, that's when it's ripe. That's when you eat it. Now they are picking apples like way before they're ripe. And the same with a lot of fruits, bananas and tomatoes. But this is, he was talking about apples. They were talking about, they pick them, you know, whatever, 8-10 days or whatever before they're ripe, and the nutrients aren't there. The nutrients manifest themselves in the last couple of days, right before you're supposed to pick it. So these apples don't have the nutrients in them because they were picked too early. I'm not sure if this is with other crops, but it is with apples. So what you're suggesting, of course, is I didn't know about that they're trying to do this right on top of the supermarket. This is brilliant because you can.
There's more than that that's happening. There are also some areas of the country where they're building whole housing developments around the farm. Now you can also grow the food in your backyard, but centrally in one housing development, they got a farm right in the middle of it. Right in the middle of it. Grow your own food, folks. Work with your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors. Divide and conquer is the oldest strategy in warfare. Read Sun Tzu. You'll understand. And this is what they're trying to do to us. Republican? Oh, you're a Republican? Well, I'm a Democrat. You're a conservative? Well, I'm a liberal. Come on, folks. You're Americans. You're human.
Yep.
You know, don't let them divide you. And don't let them, oh, you don't need to listen to Clay Douglas. You know, he's anti-Semitic. He hates Jews. This whole thing with Operation American Spring, that's what they've tried to do to me. Don't go on. He banned this Colonel Harry Riley, told his people not to come on my show because I have a hate Jew rhetoric. Look, you know, if you tell people to beware of rattlesnakes, man, that don't mean you hate rattlesnakes. They make great hackbands.
Yes, this is not about. I don't really like to even use that word, but that's what they try to put and project this as. I don't dislike any group, and I don't care who it is. Like I said, I was brought up Roman Catholic and Irish, German, and French descent, it's like if the people that were in control of the finances and from that everything else in this planet, as it very much seems like the Jewish people are, if it was Irish, I'd be saying, well, look who's the head of the Federal Reserve. And look who's the head of the Treasury for the last four of them. They're all Irish, damn it. You know, something's wrong. This shouldn't be. Duh. So, but if you actually have the balls to mention that it's Jewish people, then you're anti-Semitic. Because, oh my God, you're actually, look at that, they're naming the people that are ahead of the Federal Reserve and the head of the Treasury and the head of the largest bank in the United States and the head of the largest investment firm, the head of the SEC and this and that and the 9/11, the people that bought the building and they're all Jewish. Well, yeah, okay. And look what Israel is doing. Israel is an apartheid state.
It is. It is, and you know, I spent a lot of time in New York. You're from New York.
Right.
I spent a lot of time, I sold the head shops in New York. I sold them in Brooklyn. I sold it in Queens. And I went into shops that were owned by Arabs. I went into shops that were owned by Christians. I went into shops that were owned by Jews. They all coexisted. They got along fine. They competed with each other, selling my products, but they weren't mistreating each other, and it was working. Everything was working. Now, if Israel worked like that, I wouldn't have any problems of it. But when you're arresting 6-year-olds and you're shooting teenagers because they're Palestinians and you're accusing them of being terrorists, just like they're trying to accuse Americans, American farmers, American ranchers, American veterans, trying to accuse us of being terrorists now too. I mean, come on, folks. This is propaganda. This ain't right.
Yeah, it's just when they're and you see after Sandy Hook and the Boston bombings and these kind of false flag events, you see, who comes out right away and wants to admit, to take away the Second Amendment. You see, it's the Bloomberg, it's the Chucky Schumers, it's the Dianne Feinstein. They're right out in the open. The Raul Emanuel. These are the people that are the point people to do this, and so they're not hiding it. And the four names I just mentioned all happen to be Jewish. So I do find it interesting that they're the point people that are trying to take away the Second Amendment. And so, all I am is I call a spade a spade. I don't care who you are. So, that's why in my HolocaustRevisionism.com, in my document, I put like a couple of paragraph disclaimer saying what I just said in essence, because it's not about hate. It's not about singling out one group. It's calling a spade, and I have no problem with that. And if people and the people that have a problem with it are the people who you're calling out. They're the people that are saying don't shine the light on me. And this is the problem in and of itself, because they don't self-regulate their own people. It's like everybody else sort of doesn't let their own group get that nefarious, pernicious way. But yet they seem to be fine with letting their own be like that. So, and because we shine light on it, they demonize us. Instead of like debating 9/11 or debating the Holocaust, they won't debate it. They'll just say you're an anti-Semite, hate monger, you're this or that. It's below me to debate that kind of thing. Or in 17 different countries, they'll make it illegal to even talk about it. You go to jail for 7 years, as Ernst Sundell has and others have. So, we have thank you, once again for doing what you do, because there are not many people that, and I can hear it in your voice. You're angry, you're pissed off, you're perturbed, but there's not hate in your voice. It's more, let's all work together and change this to do it right. And that's what I hear from you. I don't hear hate.
It's not about hate. Again, I don't care who your grandmother slept with. If I see you slap a woman, I will hurt you. If I see you try to steal something, I will stop you. And that's as far as it goes. That's as far as it goes. And I'm not even interested in putting you in jail. I'm not interested in calling the police.
Right.
You try to hurt somebody else, I'll show you what it's like. I'll show you what it feels like to be hurt. That's all. Maybe you can learn a lesson from that.
Yeah, I'm very libertarian like that also. That it's sort of, and I'm very upfront, like what you just said. I'm a very easygoing person, but if I, and I have done this in my past, I saw women being mistreated, it's not going to happen in front of me. And I have no problem with stopping it and that kind of thing. And that's, that's just like you would hope, normal human nature. So
that's right. And today was a great show. It will be up on my Facebook, both the link to Blog Talk Radio and the link to YouTube. I would suggest that you add that, and you can actually get a player for the show and put it on your site. We need to let people know about it, because they want to block me in libraries, they want to block me in Intel, Intuit, and Office Depot. So pass it on, and I'll have you back on soon. I really appreciate it.
All right, Clay. Thank you so much, huh?
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye now.